Good evening everyone, my name is Teo Xie Feng. I will be presenting the last impact of environmental policies and standards on the deployment of engineering technology. The last impact is about greenhouse gas emissions. The Western Australia Department of Ecology issued a document entitled Ecological Guidance in year 2011. The 2011 guidelines stipulate that according to SEPA, it is expected that the annual average of at least 10,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. The guidelines have established three categories with different greenhouse gas disclosure requirements, including the first one, if the annual greenhouse gas emissions are expected to be less than an average of 10,000 tons of carbon dioxide, and then there is no need to process the applicant's greenhouse gas emissions according to the SEPA in inventory. The second one, if the estimated average emissions are between 10,000 metric tons and 215,000 metric tons per annum, the applicant should qualitatively disclose greenhouse gas emissions in the SEPA checklist. If the estimated annual average emissions exceed 25,000 metric tons, then the applicant should include quantitative disclosure of greenhouse gas emissions in the SEPA inventory. As an example, in August 2017, the District of Columbia Circuit Court announced the information stating that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission (FERC) could not reasonably estimate the carbon emissions of their power plants. Although FERC said that it is impossible to know exactly how much the greenhouse gases will be emitted, however, the Supreme Court still requires the FERC to strike a balance between the public interest and the adverse effects of the project. Therefore, environmental standards will not allow an excuse for indirect effects to continue polluting the environment. Next is the part of penalty functions for environmental violations under compliance to deter future violation. A deterrent effect to inspire peer companies to devote in the protection of the environment could come from the fines due to violations of the environment under compliance against the spotted companies, while a deterrent effect could be strengthened by environmental regulation. A humanistic crime theorist concludes that it is likely that the punishment such as penalty will bring an effect of preventive, and also a punishment such as penalty functions could also prevent the others from involving in crimes and deter the criminals from rehashing their crimes. In addition, the way of prevention can be explained by exploiting the peer effect, in which the target firm is the offender and the peer enterprise is the potential offender. Peer effects define that the social learning happens from the aspect of social and psychological norms and reasons and ways of behavioral imitation. The similar actions from the target company will spread to peer companies when violations of the environment in the target company become an invisible norm in social groups. Hence, when violations of the environment are recognized as unwelcome behavior, or the penalties are established on the target company, which will deliver an essential called as threat message, and then this will increase the cost of the fines, and the risk committed in violations of environmental will be learned by the peer companies. And this will prompting them to increase the efforts related to compliance, such as fulfilling the environmental standards by spending more in the corporate compliance. Based on the theory stated above, this can be concluded that having the penalties for target companies that having violations to the environment will result in an effect on peer companies to prevent it, and hence motivating them by spending more and more on the protection of the environment. Some studies show that even if the managers promise to adhere to the environmental standards, but their subordinates or even their employees would prefer not to follow due to the performance pressures. When this happens, preventive message from the target firms may not trigger the peer companies to apply, but this will deliver a sign of managers' commitment. And this sign of Managers' commitment will prompt them to examine whether any actions such as like anti-pollution is being taken or there is any need for an upgrade in emissions control equipment. Moving on, the perpetual preventive message has a guarantee function. However, a hypothesis could be generated which is the investment in the environment from the peer companies, which can be classified into the same industry section, could increase with penalties to the target company due to environmental violations. For example, for the peer companies, even though if they have complied with the fines imposed on the target company, but they might also believe that it is caused by accidents or other elements such as like violation. For example, the government has no political contact with them. In this case, the peer companies will not increase the environmental investment. However, the other hypothesis could be generated, which is in areas with the great regulations of environment, the spotted company penalties in violation of environment could raise the peers company in increasing of investment in the environment, which is in the same section. Hence, with the effect of penalties, those companies that has been penalized will undergo a decline of value in the market, corporate reputation, and even consumer resistance, and this proving that the product market and capital markets are not conducive to corporate malpractice in the environment. Therefore, the argument about the punishment often takes place in a vacuum of empirical evidence. The target companies' fine information is predicted to be one of the determinants of the receiver's response using deterrence theory. The efficiency of legal approval against the offenders cannot assess based on the direct impact of penalties due to violations in the environment from punished companies. Based on the research, it shows that the data transmitted by the violations of environmental and similar penalties are not limited to companies, but this is relevant to the decisions of investment in the environment in the same industry that covers the peer companies that have not committed such environmental harmful behaviors. The fines were imposed by the target company and pose a potential legal threat to peer companies and ultimately prompt them to make the follow-up of environmental investment. With this, the environmental violations setting is used as a motivation to encourage the peer companies to acknowledge the operation of key company. Similarly, most companies invest a minimum resource on the environmental arguments just to respond to the policies of the environment that keep changing. This is an environmental practice that is reactive and post-event actions are recommended. However, only by carefully redesigning the environmental protection policies based on the actual response of the enterprise can they be effective. Therefore, it is also important to know that what extent and in what manner the regulatory rules can be implemented that will actually improve the environmental protection, and whether the penalties have a deterrent effect is crucial to the implementation of penalties for violations of the environment. The research has proved that the presence of penalties is vital to policy in the environmental for the public. It is also vital to make the penalty effective to stimulate the specific and universal deterrence, because this will increase the cost of the violations and the potential risk of the company being punished and reduce the potential risk. The expected illegal benefits will ultimately achieve the objective of environmental protection and also expand benefits for social. Okay, as a conclusion, the environmental impact varies between projects. Therefore, to achieve the peak advantage of Industry 4.0, sufficiently planned policies should be carried out to preserve the ecosystem apart from the negative impacts of Industry 4.0. Those rules and regulations should be well laid out and concerned in every aspect. As there are many challenges facing Industry 4.0, the evolution must be enhanced and improved to allow it to follow the policies and laws created by the Environmental Protection Organization and the government. Finally, The synthesis of Industry 4.0 and the SDG Sustainable Development Goals will improve the environmental sustainability to create the ecological support that assures the environment to have a best performance and is better than before. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.